everyone, to episode 11 of the Total Relationship Podcast. I'm Kim Cochenour, the COO at Form Wealth Advisors, joined by my co-host, Tyson Ray, the CEO at Form Wealth. Today, we're actually digging into a fantastic topic about why financial advisors often fail to plan for their own succession, despite that's a majority of what their career is built upon, is helping clients plan. So the biggest thing that we all know that's coming up in the transition in this industry is there are going to be hundreds of thousands of advisors exiting the industry, and they are managing trillions of dollars in assets, and they need to go work with an advisor once those assets change hands. So Tyson, we're going to dig into that today and why it's really important for advisors to actually plan for the succession of their business. Looking forward to jumping in. Tyson,
Yes,
your
very excited.
favorite thing to talk about is
Right,
this
I
because,
bit my tongue actually to let you get the whole intro out.
oh, how gracious of you. Um, I think because you love this topic so much is going to make for a fun episode. I think the biggest thing that people don't think about when it comes to their practice is that they actually have to put a succession plan in place. It's an expected part of your business, and you need to plan for that. Um, why do advisors not prioritize the succession of their business?
Well, I think I first want to make it like client centric, right? It's I think clients are coming in and wondering what's going to happen if something happens to their advisor, and I have this interesting perspective on this, which is in the book, right? When I started my career, I had to figure out how was I going to differentiate myself from other advisors. When I was in my early 20s, I was told I wasn't going to be able to be successful because I was young. And it dawned on me, I'm like, wait a second. Like I have a 30 or 40 years ahead of me from a career standpoint
Yeah.
that I might not retire in the client's retirement, meaning I'm going to be accountable to the client 20, 30 years into the retirement and the decisions we're making today. And the advisor at the time that was the same age as the retiring client, in their early 60s, doesn't necessarily have that accountability.
Yeah.
And so I think succession is most important to let the clients know what the plan is, especially for the advisor that's listening to this, that is looking to make an exit from a lifestyle standpoint in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
I think most people
Well,
don't. So go back to your
but
question.
isn't that a
Wow.
difference, Tyson, though? There's advisors out there who are like, yeah, I've got a plan. It's my catastrophic plan. Hit that really quick because there's a huge difference between catastrophic planning and succession planning.
Well, for those that may, and I still think the vast majority don't have both or either.
Fair.
The catastrophic plan is that you don't wake up one morning,
Mm-hmm.
and the catastrophic plan usually is that uh, it's either someone within the firm or you have done some verbal agreement or some contractual agreement with either the custodian that your assets are at, that they got to go find someone to take over the clients,
Yeah.
or some friend or colleague somewhere else said, yeah, if you drop dead, I'll try and take care of things. If there isn't a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
I think to answer the question of why advisors don't do this is, I think, the same reality as to why most people don't have any estate planning, because no one wants to think about the end. Uh, or said differently, everyone's so focused on today, they're not thinking about what planning needs to take place into the future of things, just in general. We're wired that way. And I think part of the total relationship starts with the end in mind. I mean, one of the questions we ask in the beginning is like, do you want to leave anything in the end? And I think as a practice for what's best for clients, and the reason we started Form Wealth Advisors is because I was doing my estate planning because we had our first son, and I'm doing my own estate planning because I had a child, and I'm in my was I probably in my late 20s, and I'm realizing, well, okay, who's going to be in charge of what if I'm not here? And then what about the clients? And that's when I went to Luke at the time, who's been with me for forever, and said, hey, why don't we team up? Because if something happens to me, I trust you to take this over. And not a lot of advisors, especially the solo practitioners that are out there, necessarily have their best friend since they were 12 years old working alongside them. And so succession kind of became easy for us to figure out. But most advisors, I think, are leaving themselves exposed to a default plan from a catastrophic standpoint, or leaving themselves in a crisis that they get to a point, whether it's a health standpoint, whether it's just a tolerance of the practice or the stress of the environment that they're
Oh
in.
yeah, they're burned out.
Um, yeah, or get burned out. Um, that they themselves wake up one day and decide they want to be done, and it's like, wait, no. Like the more time you give your opportunity to plan, the more you can have the result you're probably looking for, and the closer you come to deciding to plan when you want to exit, the less likely your outcome is going to be ideal or what you're expecting, because no one gets uh, uh, you just don't transition this overnight, not when you're
Yeah.
dealing with clients' lives and relationships.
Exactly. Well, advisors care about their clients. So if they don't have either a catastrophic or a succession plan in place, it feels like they should prioritize both of them. Um, what are your thoughts?
Say that again. The
If the advisor doesn't even have a catastrophic or they don't have a succession plan in place, what needs to be prioritized?
Yeah, what needs to be the first thing that needs to be prioritized, because you said earlier that, because they care about their clients, and I part of the whole total relationship is to remind people to care about their clients. Um, what needs to be prioritized is the client,
Hmm.
because the other side of this coin is some of the succession stuff I've seen, or some of this exit, advisors wanting to sell their practice and retire, gets so focused on money and valuations over assets that aren't theirs, that they're the clients, and what's best for them. And what does that transition look like that gives them peace of mind? And everything we've done within uh, Foreign Wealth Advisors, the firm that we run, or the concept behind total relationship, is to be thinking in terms of what's best for the client. What gives the client the greatest um, uh, comfort knowing what that transition looks like and how that can be communicated. Can a succession actually enhance the client relationship? Can the clients actually be better off if someone else or a team is coming along and maybe enhancing the services or the relationship or the way the practice had been done from an advisor who maybe had been doing it one way for decades and just never really transitioned into holistic planning or into trying to put the client first when their career was based on, and this is true for many of them, for most of their career, they were the sole source of information. You had to call them to even find out what a stock was doing in the market
Yeah.
some 20 years ago.
Yeah, the
And they never
industry's
really
changed a
adapted to
lot.
the, yeah, they never really made the pivot to advising. They were too busy brokering or selling. And again,
Hmm.
so what's most critical is what's best for the client and how they are going to be better served by having a plan in place and understanding who is coming up behind them, and can they be introduced to them beforehand. And again, some of the succession, maybe or the success, I would say, in succession comes from allowing both the advisor to define how they want their exit to look like, and how the team or the other party that's coming in can be introduced or brought into that relationship. And it can be as simple as just communicating who that is. We've done some successions where we brought an advisor onto the team, and we just they let their clients know if something ever happens to him or he retires at some point,
Well,
we'd be taking
Tyson,
over.
before you dig into some of those
No,
examples,
don't
I'm
cut
gonna
that out.
interrupt you, and
Yes,
you're
you
gonna
are.
be all right. I
I'm going to
promise
be
you, it's
fine.
gonna be fine.
But
So
hang in
you
there.
touched on this before, but I think we skirted it too quickly. I think advisors might be avoiding succession planning for the same reason the clients don't want to plan for their future. Everyone has their own reasons. It's difficult or uncomfortable to think about. They don't have someone else that they trust, or their ego's in the place where they're not ready to let someone else step in.
Definitely the
You think
ego.
you're invincible. You're never going to retire. You don't want
I
to
think it's
slow
a
down.
fear of control. It's a fear of
Hmm.
letting go. Hmm.
Yep. That's a huge part of it. So think of the advisors that you've had some experience with, but it's like, what are the top three things, or what do you really think that's holding them back? Is it an ego thing? Is it they don't want to let go? They love what they do, or they're afraid to find their own success on the other side of retirement? Because you do that with clients all the time. You help them figure out what they're doing when they're done. If you've not done that for yourself as an advisor, of course you're not going to ever want to leave. You don't know what you're retiring to.
Uh, yeah. So I think it's all those other things. I think one of the other, I would say one of the ugly things of why someone isn't necessarily looking to define their transition is because it forces them to realize how well they've stewarded their own resources to be able to retire,
Mhm. Wow.
right? Do they have enough, do they have to go
Do they have
sell
enough
their
money to
practice?
actually do it?
Oh, right. Yeah, because that's a big, I mean, that's a, I've seen it
Mhm.
where they didn't steward well for the 20 or 30 years that they were their own financial advisor, kind of like the, the plumber's pipes leak, the shoemaker's kids don't have any shoes. The
Yeah.
financial
The
advisor
financial
didn't have
advisor is
saving.
broke.
Right. Yeah. It's awesome. Yes. And that's, and so they're hanging on because they can't afford to sell it.
Mhm.
And aside from the financial aspects of whether that, how that works, or the concerns thereof of replacing that paycheck or that income, which is the same concern that clients have when they retire, like how is this going to work?
Mhm.
Um, it is then the control. It is, who am I if I'm not a financial advisor? Who am I if I'm not able to have these relationships? I think I think there's some beautiful things in that. I think there's definitely, and I've met several advisors that their concern was they didn't know who they could trust with their clients. They didn't know who was going to take care of them or care for them as well as they did, because the privilege of the total relationship that we're talking about is that these clients like become family and very close friends. In some cases, are friends and family. And so, thinking about leaving them is it's been
It's
equated to
emotional.
like a divorce, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
very
you know,
emotional.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and Tyson, you bring up a point that in some of the previous episodes, we've talked about the importance of walking your client through the discovery deck questions that we have and kind of getting to know them. If you're not ready to do that with your clients, I think it'd be wise for advisors to take and walk themselves through that, to actually start looking through those bullet points and talking through those things with themselves and with their spouse or with their children. If they have a business partner, start that conversation so that that kind of takes the sting out of looking at what it looks like when you're done. Because if you're letting all the urgent parts of your business or your life crowd out the important parts of planning, you're really hurting yourself and your book of business at the same time. So it's worthy to be
shockingly,
taken care of.
yeah, this may shock you, but I agreed with a lot of what you said, but one thing.
Mm. Why?
What you said in the beginning was is they would take themselves through it, and I'm like, oh hell no, that's the problem. They never get around to doing it. What they need to do is have another advisor take them through it, or have a
That's fine.
colleague or someone else that can help walk them through the questions and flush out the truth, because left to our own
Mm.
demise, we don't prioritize to get around to it, and
That's
we
why
all
they've
have
not done
blind
it so
spots.
far.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It's like
So
everything else.
from
An advisor in the succession needs an advisor.
Mhm. Yeah. So part of starting this podcast, part of writing the book, trying to connect with other advisors, you people are looking advisors are looking for community, and I think that's what we're starting to see on the Total Relationship LinkedIn page is a great place for advisors who are like-minded. So if you're struggling to find someone that you could even just have that conversation with, you've got to be able to start somewhere. Like you said, not everybody has a Luke in their corner, and they're out there kind of beating the pavement all by themselves. So having community, I think, is a big part of this too, where you kind of the phrase of iron sharpens iron, like help each other do better for themselves, for their clients, for their families.
Yeah, and I have a colleague that I've known for my entire career that I was surprised to find out that they sold their practice, and they're maybe 10 or 15 years from what I would refer to as a normal retirement age.
Hmm.
And in the end, they did it because they just felt like they were on an island, and they were having a hard
Mm.
time hiring team members, and they were having a hard time kind of growing in the complexity of things. And the heart wrenching part of it is that when they went through their own succession, which was also a sale, on the other side of that sale, they found out that the fit they thought they were going to have, they didn't have. And
Mm.
now effectively their careers are ended. They've sold their practice, and their clients have been turned over to a company that really wasn't ideal. And
Yeah,
it's kind of
that's
going back to
heartbreaking.
community, is that there are resources out there and other teams like ours that are happy to try and help leverage resources and things that we have to let advisors continue to advise their clients and take some of the pain away, before
Hmm.
you just take a check and walk away, but then walk away with regret. Because the whole purpose of doing planning is to avoid future regret. The whole purpose of doing planning is to make sure that you understand the future consequences of your present decisions, and we can try and sit here 5 or 10 years from now. And in this case, it was like 12 months later for their entire career. 12 months later, they regretted how they ended, and they got to live with that for the rest of forever. And
Yeah.
that's kind of our passion again of why we're starting to explore how to put some conversations together and thoughts together around this whole idea of sale or succession or what that exit's going to look like for the advisor.
Yeah. So I'll let you circle back because I'm nice. You were trying to dig into
I
previous
wish the I wish the
acquisitions.
I wish the listeners could vote on that whole nice comment.
Oh,
Anyway,
you
go
know
on.
I'll win. But moving on. Um, the thing that you have had the opportunity to walk through is several acquisitions in your career, and you have seen them go every which way. And I think it's important that we kind of dig into some of the things that you've learned. And something that you emphasize intensely, and even at the beginning of this episode, is that you don't want to put your clients in the middle. You're thinking about your clients. How do you start pulling yourself out of this acquisition and really being a part of a successful transition? So I'd actually like to have you talk a little bit about your experience with a successful acquisition and then a struggle.
Yeah, I think, and this is probably going to surprise a lot of people. The advisor that's looking to transition in over time with a junior advisor that was not originally organically part of the firm, right? They weren't hired and been there for years, and now are just going to continue what the firm has been doing. Most successions, I believe, is an associate is hired or a firm is merged together, and then they try and spend a period of time to get in front of and meet with the clients. And one of the biggest conflicts in succession in that scenario is the ego of the two chiefs sitting at the table with the client sitting there. And the old advisor wants to basically show the client and the younger advisor or the new firm how well they did, ego, right? And most likely this acquiring company firm person is coming into the situation and probably is going to do some things differently, if for no other reason they're a different person.
Yeah, different
And
practices practice
yes,
different.
and I was on the wrong end of that transaction for several years. Uh, in the beginning of my career, driving myself nuts because I disagreed with how things were going, and I just kind of kept my mouth shut because it confuses the client.
Mhm.
Now, once the succession is over and the new associate is in place and the old associate has retired and gone on with the life, then you can introduce new things to the client. But most clients want to know that nothing's going to change. And I think nothing's going to change can be defined as you're going to have problems and solutions are going to be provided and your best interests are going to be looked after because you are first, Mr. and Mrs. Client. What advisors want to get caught up on is who's right over the stock portfolio or what product they're going to be used, how they're going to be compensated, and all that
Yep.
stuff shouldn't be hammered out when two advisors are sitting in front of one client, creating conflict with the client and present, or creating conflict amongst themselves when the client's not present.
Yeah, it's
That
like
can be
bringing your
hammered out.
child to your divorce negotiation, your divorce settlement. You don't put them in the
Yeah,
middle of that.
right. Um, so I think the other things that we've learned is um, uh, it, everything in relationships and everything interacting with a client is all about expectations.
Mm.
And so I've seen successions work where here we were walking alongside the advisor for the better part of almost 5 years before that advisor decided to retire. And we were meeting with the clients and adding value and bringing the comfort to the client of knowing there was someone else there if something happened. And in some regards, we gave the senior advisor probably several more years of enjoying being in the seat that they were in because we were taking some of the work and some of the load and some of the stress off their plate and helping with the service of the clients. Um, I've seen that one, right? Time working together for several years. I've also seen, and a lot of this has to do with just the personalities of the advisors. We had taken on an advisor who our personalities were, I totally respected him, but we were night and day different. Like we could not have been more. In every way, we were different, with the exception of putting the client's interest first. And in that scenario, we sent what we called like the divorce letter because I didn't want to. We couldn't sit in front of the room in front of the client without making each other's skin crawl and zap our energies. And so we we brought them into the firm. We let the advisor be part of our marketing and on our newsletter and be part of the website and have the business card and continue to service clients and do everything he's ever done the whole way he's always done it. And then the day he went to retire, we sent off a letter that basically said he's retiring and we're now taking over, and we look forward to sitting down and taking an opportunity to get to know you. And it worked because he was telling the clients if something happens to me when I'm retired, they're going to step in.
Yep.
And when he finally retired, we sent a letter that said he's retired and we're now stepping in. And so we didn't have to have this long runway of trying to transition the relationship because
Mhm.
again, the client wants to report, or the client wants to look to the senior advisor where the trust sits. And until that advisor is no longer there, you're not really going to know whether the trust has been transferred.
Yeah.
Well, so let's see. We got what else we learned?
Well,
Well,
so
we've
Tyson,
learned
before
that.
you dig, hang on for a quick
Hang
sec. So
on.
you talk about how it I've heard in several different succession webinars I've been a part of, and they talk about you need to have at least a 3-year transition window. I think really what they're not reflecting when they say it has to be a 3-year transition window is if you can have mutual respect for each other and it's actually a good transition, and that retiring advisor is actually communicating to the client, this is why they're here, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going on, that you don't have to have a 3-year transition window of you sitting in a meeting and the exiting advisor sitting in a meeting and the client doing, like, you don't have to do that song and dance. If you're both on the same page about how that transition's going to go, you can find success without it having to be defined as a 3-year exact window, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, I don't think you need to have. I think you can have a 3-year window. I think you have a 10-year window. We had one that went off that was like a 24-hour window. We stepped into a crisis, and it was literally acquired a practice within 24 months, or 24 months, acquired a practice within 24 hours. And basically tried to salvage some of the team that everybody had resigned. It was a disaster. It was just the biggest mess ever. But when I sat down with some of the people of the team that resigned because they didn't like what was transpiring, and I just said, hey, why don't we try and see if we can work together, because it's going to be what's best for the client. We're always going to agree that we're never going to sit down in front of a client and conflict each other. We're always going to be on the same page to try and what is the path we're going to take to making the client's interest come first. If you can have that as a core value, if you can have mutual respect, if you can check your ego at the door, um, teaming up and working together can actually bear a lot of fruit in helping the client. Different from, again, the advisor that isn't accepting the reality that you're going to exit the business somehow. You're either going to die, or you're going to wake up one day and physically not be able to do it, emotionally not want to do it, or the industry is going to pivot and surprise you with what the new environment's looking like, and the repercussions of which you're going to be reacting to instead of being able to control, which is the whole irony of the whole succession and sale of a practice goes back to they're afraid of letting go of control, but by doing nothing, they're actually going to lose control.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's part of it, is being able to make the decision when you have all your mental faculties in place. That's why you want clients to do their estate planning long before it's actually needed. That the plan is in place. You can make those decisions, and you have time to actually process that. When you're making decisions in a crisis mode, you're not going to feel at peace about that, even if that might have been the resolution you were planning on the whole time. But when you're making it in a crisis mode, you're not setting yourself up for success. You're not setting your team or your clients or your family up for success. You have to be able to plan. It's a big part of it.
Well, and some best practices of anybody that is an advisor, that will lead to a better sale or succession plan is documenting the relationship. It is There is so much information in the advisor's head that they can keep it there. At some point, it becomes quite a lot, but the reality is they know who's related to who. They know how they became a client. They know what sports teams they like. They know what where the kids and grandkids went to college, and so they have that relationship. And what you find out really quickly on the acquiring side of a practice is if none of that's documented, you're starting from scratch. you're starting from an inability to really transfer that relationship, different from building out and using the technology that's out there within the CRM, which is not a contact management system of a name, address, and phone number. That's not what I'm talking about.
No,
Like it
it's
is
the
a
meat of the
relationship management
relationship.
tool. Yes, it's a relationship management tool where you can capture information, especially information that doesn't change, where they graduate high school or where they went to college. Did they have any military experience? What's their anniversary? How did they meet? What are the kids' names and birth dates? And who's that's your brother, sister, uncle, aunt, within the network of a family, to see how people are related, that a new advisor coming in can't tell because the names are different and the addresses are different and the states are different, the dollar amounts are different. But again, part of setting yourself up for success and succession is starting to use tools or getting help from an acquiring team to come in and download what's in your head into the tool. So now when the new advisor is sitting down with the client, they can pick up and say, oh, you're the daughter of so and so, and you went to such and such school and got a degree in this, that, and the other thing else, because it's captured in the history of the relationship of who you are as a person, to build the platform to then start that relationship. And when you don't know any of that, you can go through the process that we have to ask the questions to build it out. But if it's already there, you can speak into it and just pick up almost where the relationship was left off.
Yeah. Well, and I think that transitionary time in the relationship between one advisor to the next, the client has more comfort around that relationship, that they're not having to start over from scratch. People are very like, your finances are very emotional, and the person that you are entrusting with your life savings, that relationship matters a lot. It's different than the same cash register you or cashier you check out with every week at the grocery store. There's a deep relationship between an advisor and a client. And if you're really keeping the client front and center, transferring that relationship to the next advisor is the wisest thing I think you can do for your clients. That lets them know that you do really care, is that you're letting that go to someone who's going to take that relationship and hold that well.
Yep. And it's the same with the total relationship, doing the life plan to know what the next vacation is, much less what the last vacation was, or to know they always go to Greece every July. These are all part of the process that uh, adds value to your practice. It allows another advisor to come in and step into that relationship. And if it's all in your head when you walk out the door with it, it doesn't help it doesn't help transitioning that relationship. It doesn't help the new advisor to step into taking care of the client. And again, it seems like it's a lot of work using technology and using the tools out there, or finding an acquiring partner that cares enough to get that data from you, however we can get it from you in the easiest form of getting it from you, um, can help all of us not regret the decisions we're making if we're trying to find some new partnership to work off of or some form of succession plan to implement.
Yeah. I think there's going to be another episode in our future where we continue to dig into this topic. So, thank you everybody for tuning into today to episode 11 of the Total Relationship Podcast. If you haven't already, click follow or subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are available. New episodes are available every other Tuesday. Check out the description link for free resources and links to connect with Tyson and me on LinkedIn. And again, visit totalrelationship.com for any other additional resources. Until next time.